Here we go. I'm thrilled to be here. We don't do a whole lot of interviews these days like we used to, but I always make time for the people I'm really excited to speak with. And I'm speaking with one tonight. We're here with Daniel Tyrie. It is Tyrie, correct? It's not Tyrie?
Tyrie, you got it right the first time.
All right, good. I got a habit of mispronouncing every single name that I ever say on this show. So, and as a Canadian, I'm sure you wouldn't correct me when I did it, but good thing we got that out of the way. Daniel Tyrie has recently launched an organization known as the Dominion Society of Canada. It's an organization that I'm pretty excited about. And I know that he's been doing the rounds recently, getting the word out. It's been a great success as far as I can understand. A huge upswell of support and registrations. Before we get into the Dominion Society, for people who haven't heard of it before, we'll get into it. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time with speaking with us tonight.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's always nice to talk about what we're doing and spread the message any way we can.
Oh, sweet. We got Alberta separatists checking in here, according to the chat.
Oh,
We've
no.
also got
There goes the party.
Someone said I am late and gay, but you see, you got to understand, Daniel, about this audience of mine. They're sick people, Daniel. They say they try to pepper me with hey nows and woe dogs such as this, starting me off on the wrong foot. But you will not bewitch me with your negativity tonight. Let me ask you this: Dominion Society, have you been happy with the response so far? Last count I had was you got 500 members of this new organization.
Yeah, and then some. We've got a few more since the weekend. We passed that 500 mark on Sunday, a little under 2 weeks after our launch date. I think we're sitting around 560 or something like that now. But yeah, consistently growing. I would say it's on the good end of expected. We have been preparing for this launch for a while now. There's a couple things that didn't go quite according to plan, but those might have been a bit too optimistic. Despite some of my efforts, we haven't attracted any attention from the mainstream media, negative or positive. But aside from that, I'd say everything's going really well. We've gained thousands of followers across our 5 different social media platforms. We're seeing quick growth on especially Twitter and Instagram. And we've seen, more than 500 paid members in just under 2 weeks, representing every single province and one territory. So definitely way faster in terms of membership sales than we were expecting. And now it's all about kind of reaching out to these people, understanding who they are and how they can be involved in our organization. Because while the online component is really important to expanding and getting our message out, we don't want to just be online influencers. We want to be a real boots on the ground organization, spreading our message in the streets, in mailboxes, really getting to the core of Canadian public life, and making Canadian nationalism as a perspective normal, as well as making the term remigration common parlance.
The word remigration, people can see it on the screen right here. I've got the website pulled up for Dominion Society of Canada. There's 2 main headers here. What is a Canadian and what is remigration? We'll get to that in just a second. But I also wanted to give a bit of a preamble here describing the organization. Normally, Daniel is tasked with doing this himself, but I'm going to do it myself because I'm a gracious host. So I love this word here, and we're going to get to this in a second, but a vanguard movement promoting Canadian nationalism and immigration reform to preserve the distinct Canadian nation. And you might say, well, there must be many groups of like this up here. There's actually not that many large movements up in Canada. There's movements such as Diagolon and others, but there's, as far as I know, nothing like this that exists that is saying with its full chest, remigration, immigration reform now. And important to note here, a vanguardist movement, but not a political party. It's important to stress that. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. We're taking a bit of a different approach. There's been a lot of clamor around maybe starting a new political party or something of the like, some sort of nationalist entity, and we decided to take things from a bit of a unique approach, I suppose, a metapolitical approach. there's a lot of challenges that political parties face in Canada, small parties in particular. I'd know that better than most. But there's things like the kind of the general electoral system, first past the post, makes it a big challenge. The way that subsidies from the government support political parties help large parties at the expense of small ones, as well as just the kind of general population dynamics and landscape of Canada, the sparse population across a massive landmass. These things make it really difficult to organize a small political party in Canada, much more difficult than smaller European countries where it's much easier for small groups of people to get together and work collaboratively. So instead of diving into a political party and losing, we decided to take things a bit more of a metapolitical approach to influence existing political parties. A big thing that we've seen is there's all these arguments around vote splitting and such. We want to make it so it's not a question of choosing us or choosing another party. We've made our views clear, and we want to amass a large base of support that agree with our ideas of Canadian nationalism and remigration, and we want to use that base of support to influence political parties. We already know that there's massive demand for these issues. Public opinion polls show time after time that a large majority of Canadians want little to no immigration, and even a significant portion want mass deportations. But there's no kind of organizing factor to these people, so it's easy to take them kind of for granted and focus on other political issues. We want to make it so that's impossible to ignore, that there's an organized cohort of voters that are ready to shift to a different party or not vote at all, depending on a party's or a politician's stance on these issues. These are the most important issues facing Canada today, and it's time we have a kind of professionalized organization that'll make it clear that this issue cannot be ignored any longer, and these are the only solutions that are viable to address them.
Now, you said a lot there, and there's many points that I'd love to drill into, and we will. But I think a great place to start, I'd be remiss if we did not talk about your previous life as a member of the PPC. Would it just be a member, or were you in any sort of position within that organization? And then there was a break, and here we are now. But without getting into the guts of what the PPC was, would you care to share your story there? Maybe what inspired you to move on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I got involved with the PPC very early. I graduated my degree in political science in 2018, right before the PPC was founded, and I jumped in very quickly. Immigration reform was always kind of a massive mobilizing issue for me, and as I was exiting university, it seemed like the CPC was kind of beyond reform. This is kind of immediately after Maxime Bernier was had the leadership stolen from him in 2018 or 2017. So when the PPC was started, it seemed like a big opportunity for me to be able to get involved in politics without having to like sift through the boomers and the establishment in local level kind of conservative politics. So I got right involved in the PPC. Just keen to kind of put my stamp on it, and kind of I saw it as a high potential kind of vehicle for kind of Zoomers and younger Canadians to kind of have their say in Canadian politics. So I got involved where I was living at the time in Kitchener-Waterloo, where I went to university, and I helped establish the EDAs in that area. There's 5 different ridings in the Tri-Cities, and I helped establish those and met some great guys through that. And by the early 2019, January 2019, I had moved down to Ottawa. I was living out of Airbnbs with a couple of other guys I met through the PPC and volunteering right at PPC HQ to get the organization kind of on track to prepare for the 2019 election. After a month of long days volunteering, Max hired me full time, and I worked for the PPC for the last few years. I was promoted to executive director after the 2019 election. So I was kind of the head staffer of the organization in a small leadership team with Maxim and some other guys behind the scene. And that's a role I stayed in until May of last year. In early 2024, we started really butting heads about the direction and messaging and kind of internal operations of the party, and ultimately, I was kind of pushed out. So for the last year, I've kind of been looking at what to do next. I still had a big drive to influence Canadian politics. There was I felt that immigration, which again I think is the most important issue, is not being served well by any politician, including the PPC. So I thought I would do something about it. So that's where the idea for Dominion Society came from.
It's fascinating stuff. And for the people who are wondering what the hell is going on with your screen right now, there's something going on with the platform that we're using where it's not allowing me to show comments on screen like I usually do. I can throw up comments and show them to everyone. And there's some kind of glitch where it's supposed to be showing the entire chat right now, and it's just not. So if it just looks fucked up, that's why. And so I'll just be reading out the comments that I think are appropriate. One here from Anonymous says the Laurentian Uniparty will never allow remigration. It has to come from the people, just like you are building. I think that's a very supportive comment. And one implication there you had said was the thing you're trying to do cannot be executed by the PPC. And speaking from my perspective, I was very early in the PPC as well. I was one of the first people that joined up, not in any sort of significant role, but when I heard about it, I thought it was interesting. I liked it. I think a lot of people like Maxime Bernier. Maxime Bernier can get on Joe Rogan. Maxime Bernier can seemingly go wherever he wants to, and he's good on a mic. He's good in front of a camera. It seems to me, and I'm not trying to trigger any disclosure here, but from my perspective, it seemed that much like I remember when Jack Layton was running the NDP, it seemed like it was not so much a cult of personality around him, but he was the central figure. It was his house. So I look at the PPC, I'm like, this is the Maxime Bernier thing. The organization itself is much shoddier and flimsier than the power of his personality. So the engine behind him, I don't think would be sufficient to engage in what you're discussing. But he will gesture to this stuff occasionally. He will talk. Maybe even he'll bring up Native Canadians. There's a tendency now for politicians to signal to old stock Canadians. They won't use that terminology, of course, but something like that. But then you look at their actions, or you look at their true organization, and it seems that nothing has changed. So my concern is that, well, the PPC showed. I mean, Christ, if you've been watching the PPC the past few elections, they've just gotten worse and worse. It started off small, and it's gotten smaller and smaller every time, to the point where I was on a live stream on Countercurrents before the election, and it's just, we got to call it. Look, we got Maxime Bernier. He can start a think tank, whatever he wants to do, but this PPC thing is just, call it. Time of death. Because like the percentage of its success will get lower and lower every single time until what the fuck are we doing anymore? And I think there might be a lot more room to breathe and a lot more opportunity for an organization like this, as the PPC isn't vacuuming up a bunch of naive but well-meaning people who might think that the PPC is this thing.
Yeah, I think momentum and vibes really matters in politics. And at this point, the PPC's kind of lost all of its momentum, and it kind of has the stink of loss on it. It's almost a part of the brand at this point. And that's a difficult thing to overcome. Like no one wants to support the losers, and the PPC has racked up a lot of L's. So I think that's really difficult for them to overcome. But I also think there's just kind of broader philosophical issues with the PPC. Like we all know that the kind of driving force behind Maxime Bernier's kind of political ideology is libertarianism. That's kind of how he made out as a firebrand.
It's wild being an old libertarian, like just being a guy that doesn't
an old
age
French
out of
libertarian at that. So right, that was his big appeal, right? He had the kind of Western libertarianism, but he came from Quebec. That's why he was kind of an interesting figure in the CPC. But is that really what we need in Canada in 2025? I think we've gotten to this point when kind of the broader liberal moral framework has come under fire. And while Maxime Bernier is very willing and ready to jump on all sorts of different kind of culture war grievance issues that kind of overlap with this kind of liberal illiberal divide, he's not willing to really do so from the proper perspective just because of his underpinning philosophy. So that's another reason I didn't want to start a political party. Obviously, when Max started the PPC, he had a huge base of support from his CPC leadership campaign. He had a big kind of political brand across the country. I don't have anything like that, and I didn't want to just jump in and start losing elections and by-elections, because I think that has a kind of self-defeating kind of cycle to it. Instead, we're going to approach things metapolitically, take this advantage to find good people across the country, build a grassroots organization, engage in kind of ground level campaigning. If sometime down the line we find that this is not being successful enough, the politicians are not listening or can't be trusted to implement the right solutions, we'll be in a better position to start a political party with actual good people across the country that can actually have an effective organization, which is something the PPC has lacked. So I wouldn't put a political party off the table sometime in the future. But I think in the short term, our strategy is going to be more effective at immediately influencing politics while also setting us up better for the future.
I think that's the way to do it. I think a lot of people think that a political party has an immediate legitimizing effect, and they get excited about having, this big thing, this construct that you can be a part of and say you're the president of. But in doing so, you start accepting too much money, you get too big too fast, and you become this bloated, failing organ of power. Whereas if what you're trying to do is just get the right people together. And sir, let me just get to a comment here. And I realize that the main failing of me having to read these comments myself is I need to mention their names. So we have a comment here from Bumfundler, who says the PPC should limit itself to one or two big policy issues. And
I
that's
agree.
what jumped out at me about the Dominion Society is you really only have the one policy issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, we build our movement on two main ideas, but they are kind of intimately connected. So that's Canadian nationalism and remigration. I do think this is a big failing of the PPC. They try and just latch onto every kind of culture war grievance issue, and as a result, it's hard to understand what they are in politics. I think their biggest success was in 2021 when they were kind of a single issue COVID party. Very easy for the public to understand. You have a small amount of political capital in the overall political conversation, so make your kind of identity as simple for the public to understand as possible. You didn't like lockdowns, the PPC were your guys. You didn't want the vaccine passport, the PPC were your guys. But now in the post-COVID era, they've kind of pivoted back to immigration, but also gender ideology, but also we need to balance the budget, but also climate change isn't real. And it just becomes difficult for the average person to follow, and kind of an unsustainable kind of voter coalition, because maybe 10 people in the room agree with the stance on immigration, but five of those people don't like the stance on climate change, and two more of them don't like the stance on gender ideology, and as a result they don't vote, or they vote for the Conservatives because they have a better chance of winning or whatnot.
Yeah, a common enough story.
They've spread themselves too thin, and I think that's why we want to stay focused on the most important issue, immigration. We have a controversial kind of suggestion. I think it's common sense. Our proposal is remigration, and we don't want to talk about the economy. I mean, the economy is intertwined with these issues, but we don't want to get into conversations about climate change and all these other issues. We want to stay focused on the most important issue of the day. I have my opinions on all sorts of issues, obviously. But
what the Dominion Society should weigh in on is Christianity versus paganism. I think that's a winning sort of.
yeah, get into these contentious debates. You're all welcome in the Dominion Society as long as you agree with our ideas on Canadian nationalism and remigration.
There's an interesting comment here from Minezer that I just found kind of amusing. The PPC was poorly thought out, I think. They didn't follow the model of other small parties like the Greens. You need to consolidate in a few ridings to build. That is true, but that triggered me to think that there's some real opportunity for Maxime Bernier by really getting crazier. I think he's less insane than he should be because the Greens, Christ, I mean, you just get some fat lady to say all men should die. So, like, think of all the stuff Maxime Bernier could advocate for. He could say we should nuke Brazil. Why not? Like, why not? If you got 0.0001%, you can just say things.
I,
See what
I,
happens.
I think the Greens are a poor comparison, though. I think the Greens are the closest thing that you can relate the PPC strategy to. If you look at the success of upstart or populist parties throughout Canadian history, the trend for the successful ones is that they're regionalist, right? You have the Social Credit Party out of Alberta. You have the CCF, which turned into the NDP, which was primarily a Saskatchewan-based and then Western party. You have the Creditistes in Quebec, or the Bloc in Quebec. The most successful parties are regional, and a big part of that is kind of those logistical issues that I was talking about earlier, right? It's difficult to do politics across the country. The PPC found success due to technological change. Like the early infrastructure of the PPC was completely organized through Facebook groups, which is something that people don't really, it's under discussed, and it is an interesting facet of the party's growth. But historically speaking, like this, like it's just so difficult to do politics just be in Canada because it requires a lot of travel, which requires a lot of capital, which requires a lot of time. So the more successful movements have been, provincial or regionalist movements where you can more easily kind of get together and collaborate. So I think the Green comparison is not the best, because the Green Party is actually the closest thing to what the PPC has tried to emulate, but they're not really something to emulate, right? They haven't been successful in any capacity beyond holding 1 to 3 seats over the last few elections. That hasn't really influenced the conversation, right? The popularity of climate change is kind of global. It's beyond the Green Party.
At the risk of spending too long on this topic, because I didn't invite you over here to talk about PPC the entire time, but we are getting some interesting comments here. Dr. Pooks says Bernier ran in the Portage Lisgar by-election where the PPC had 20% support in 21 and somehow turned it into 13% while being bold and coming out as anti-abortion. And that's why it is very difficult for them to even hold their sure thing ridings, as few as they are, which made me look at that and say, we got to call this, we got to put this to bed till we figure out what's going on, because it does seem like Bernier's tried a lot of different things. They haven't worked. Okay, hey, not your fault. Canada's weird, but you got to go away to come back. Let's figure out
that riding
where
was
this
more
is going
complicated wrong. Though. That one riding, it was a massive COVID base of support, and it was particularly, they were able to activate a lot of non-voters. There's a lot of Hutterite and Mennonite communities across Portage Lisgar, which aren't even like well known by the government. They are in these like hidden communities surrounded by woods, and they actually came out to vote because for the first time in generations, the government was showing up at their communities and saying they had to get jabbed and stuff. So there was this huge cohort that usually don't vote as a matter of religion that came out and resulted in a massive swing in Portage Lisgar in 2021. But if you look at the previous results, in 2019 the PPC got like 3.9% there or something like that. So Bernier did much better than 2019. He was able to retain a lot of COVID support, which in the most recent election we saw has completely disappeared. But also by-elections are difficult when you're operating against these big parties with massive lists, right? It becomes a game of get out the vote. And the CPC has a great infrastructure and knows a lot of names and addresses and are able to kind of get their supporters out, which is a big task to fight against in a by-election like that.
You never think about the Mennonite vote. And I had never considered it either. You'd think you could recapture them by just knocking on their I don't know, sheds, wherever the fuck they live, and saying you didn't like strange chemicals being injected into your body. Well, what do you think about Indians being injected into your body? Bada bing. There you go.
I mean,
I
if
know
the
this shit.
Indians
I know
started showing
politics.
up at their door, I think they'd be more receptive to getting out to vote. But right now, they're kind of isolationist in their communities, so they're
Hey,
detached
guess what?
from that.
I'm pretty fucking good at this, by the way. There's a point you made earlier. We're gonna get into some other very very large topics about what is a Canadian and whatnot. But I wanted to return to something you briefly mentioned, that you had not received much or any mainstream news coverage. And I guess this is a two-part question. A, is that surprising? Because you would think there would be some mention. But B, have you seen any negative pushback in the form of, let's say, the Canada Anti-Hate Network or anyone, any groups thus far?
So I did try and proactively reach out to the media, and I have a background in politics. It's not the first time I've done the whole kind of rigmarole of press releases and media advisories and all this. So I did kind of take a proactive stance with the mainstream media and try to get our name out there. I didn't expect much, and we got completely ignored. Um, I also prepared a series of op-eds, which I kind of tried to get published in various mainstream media outlets with safe messaging. I wasn't going over the top. I think it's very much in line with some of the things you see coming out of the National Post today, which has like become quite critical of mass immigration. But again, I got completely ignored. So we haven't gotten much attention that way. I'm not incredibly surprised. I'm sure there are groups, especially anti-hate, that have an eye on us and are looking for ways to smear us. At some level, I'm open to coverage, positive and negative. All press is good press. I think it is a kind of positive signal in itself that they're avoiding talking about us, because we are doing things. We're setting high standards for ourselves. We're trying to be as professional as possible to appeal to a broad set of average Canadians. And the fact that they're ignoring us, I think, means we're doing that well. They can't just smear us as stupid racists or whatever they want to do for in that regard. But I would have preferred to see some coverage. But we'll have to wait and see how that develops. I'm sure they're doing our homework and trying to find me slipping up in any way that I
Yeah,
can.
they'll try. They would love to cancel you with something obvious if they could. My suspicion is that they won't engage with you directly unless they believe they can get you in a proper one-to-one video interview where they can control the editing, unless you really, really push for it, as some other advocates have done. And they think they've got you in a gotcha trap, but as we've seen with many other similar interviews, their own ineptitude gets in their way and it ends up blowing up because the interviewer's too stupid or something. I think that would be the only way to do it, because you can't see him on screen right now, but you can hear him. He's very good on the mic, and if we're being honest, he's like annoyingly handsome. So like he's the
Too
type of guy
kind.
they don't want. They don't want, like, they would like it if he looked abnormal or if he was weird or just screaming or something, and he's not. So they need to figure out, I think they're trying to do that right now, how to approach you or how to get you in a situation where they can edit you into saying something dumb. But it's probably, honestly, it's going to be difficult, because if you just read through the site, if you just look at what's being said, there's nothing egregious about any of it, not really. And it's at a time where I'm noticing regular old ham and eggers talking about the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Normal people are talking about remigration in a way that you could not even imagine 3 to 4 years ago.
I've heard that a lot in the last couple of weeks. A lot of people that are signing up are like, I can bring this up so easily. People are so open to these ideas, and I'm kind of proud and not embarrassed to show you to plug you guys and suggest that they check you out and join. Uh, we want to make it as difficult for these kind of activist journalists and anti-hate folks as possible. They've been rather effective at kind of smearing the nationalist movement as like stupid and not something people want to be associated with, right? Enforcing these kind of stereotypes of skinheads and neo-Nazis and so on. We want to kind of break through that stereotype and provide a kind of professional outlook on things, especially because we just think these ideas are kind of common sense and necessary. I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of for advocating on behalf of your people, and standing up for your ancestors and your descendants. I think people are hungry for that, and we want to be that organization that people can just kind of funnel towards and get behind. I want to be the spokesperson that can stand up for them and deliver their message in an effective and clear manner. And whether that be to the media or to the leaders of political parties that are looking for a new way to win the next election, I think we can be that voice on behalf of a significant portion of Canadians that are hungry for these ideas to be implemented and defended.
Now, before we get to the next point, based on what we've been discussing, there's a question I had that, maybe you don't have the answer to at present, but it would be very illustrative of some of the issues I've encountered with trying to do something like this in Canada, because I say to people all the time, trying to get any sort of, what would you call it, movement or organization in Canada, it's like herding cats. Everyone's too spread apart. No one gets along. Everyone's shit talking each other. It's a nightmare. What I was wondering, and you're active in nearly every province and territory from the sounds of it, but just from a distance, have you encountered any difficulty in getting the Quebecois on board versus perhaps more of the Anglophone provinces?
Obviously, we've had a bit of problems with Quebec in particular. We're a small team right now. It's basically the founding board. Greg, Ken, and I kind of operating everything behind the scenes right now, until we can kind of build out a more, reach out to all of our members and kind of build a more national infrastructure. The three of us are Anglophones. So we haven't been producing content in French. Our website's not in French. And as such, our reach into the province is limited. So I've been breaking things down from a provincial perspective. Quebec per capita for our kind of membership is obviously, as expected, kind of lagging behind. We've been most actually successful on a per capita basis, at least in the Maritimes, especially in Nova Scotia. Which I found rather interesting. But other than that, it's pretty consistent across the country with kind of Quebec being that lagging point. But we hope to bring on some French speakers in order to translate our materials and start producing things in both languages. We're really proud of our kind of bicultural history. I think Quebec is a crucial kind of part of Canada. I think that's something that a lot of people who call themselves nationalists kind of fail to recognize. Any sort of nationalist solution in Canada can't be anti-Quebec. It has to be we have to work in the model of Sir John A. and George Etienne Cartier, I think. But as well, I think there is actually similar organizations in Quebec that are already organized. Things like the Nouvelle Alliance come to mind. I think they're doing good stuff. So perhaps there could be some sort of partnership between organizations with us and some other organization in Quebec, or perhaps we will be able to kind of beef up our French-speaking capabilities to start doing things more bilingually, because I think Quebec is a crucial puzzle piece.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you're taking that seriously. Oftentimes Quebec is overlooked, and I'm as guilty of that as anyone, because a lot of our shared friends have made some inroads there. Quebec to me is a black box. I don't really know what's going on there, but I keep hearing that there's significant figures and there's good stuff being done. It's just we never really hear about it. And I think that's something I'd like to tackle more in the future. We have one comment here, and this is going to lead into a second question that I have, but it's from Mine Zur. Says, what do you have to say to people who are apprehensive towards signing up out of the risk of their safety through repression by the state, i.e., the repercussions if the member list were to be leaked? And I ask this because I know I've seen a lot of our shared friends and colleagues dealing with this the same way. You announce something and all the comments are full of accusations that this is honey trap, this is feds, this is, I'm not putting my name out there. I won't sign up for anything ever. And some of our shared, a lot people we know have been trying to fight against that. But what do you say to that? What do you have to say to people who are apprehensive for that reason?
Yeah, I understand where they're coming from. I think the convoy leaks have been a kind of driving force behind that apprehension. I have been called a Fed more times in the last 2 weeks than I have been ever in my life. I will say that I have a pretty public history over the last 5 years. I'm not a federal agent. This is not a honeypot. I'm just a Canadian that wants his country back. And we're taking privacy concerns kind of as our top priority. Everything that we use is kind of leading industry standard technology. Well, we have very high privacy standards for all of our volunteers that are incoming, and we'll only share as limited information with volunteers as possible to accomplish their task. No one has access to our membership information beyond the founding board members. And all of our database and everything we use is kind of top of the line and secure. So I try and we try as much as possible to kind of give people peace of mind. Clearly, a lot of people are at least willing to take the risk on it. We have seen a lot of signups both to our email list and to our membership list over the last 2 weeks. But I understand your concerns, but the state flourishes by kind of sowing seeds of doubt like this. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people who aren't people, quote unquote, a lot of accounts that are accusing us of being a honeypot or being feds are just are the actual feds, right? They want to undermine our movement by sowing these seeds of doubt.
Yeah, and that's an easy strategy to employ.
Exactly, right. All it takes is a Twitter account with no profile picture and numbers in the handle. So I mean, we can do nothing, or we can kind of take a little bit of a risk on some young guys that are trying to that are putting their reputations on the line to start a movement to take back our country.
Yeah,
I think it's worth the risk, but.
If I could speak from my own perspective, and I'm not trying to speak on behalf of you or anyone else, but young men would be attracted to something like this. I'm old as shit. I got a job. I got 2 kids, and I'm still interested in something like this. If not this, then something approaching it. Now, why? Because, maybe at one point in my life, maybe even when I was younger, I thought I was being smart and crafty by saying that I'm not falling for any voter roles. I'm not going to put myself at risk. But over time, and I think this does come with age. It's a mistake to say that as you get older, you get weaker, or more risk adverse. I actually think you get crazier. I actually think you become more settled in the lines you've drawn around yourself that you won't cross, for example. But another one would be that it feels like you're living in what we call a prey position, constantly trying to avoid being seen, retreating further and further into the darkness. Because as I said, there's nothing outlandish about anything you're saying. These are reasonable points. They're points that, and I always use this as a litmus test. Can you show this to a member of your family and they're going to freak out? I don't think so. I think your aunts and your uncles and your parents are probably talking about the same thing. They just never heard it put into these words before. But if you're always arguing in favor of the prey position, at a certain point, that just sounds pathetic. And for me, despite the job, despite the kids, despite the age, I'm not that old really, but if I can't go out there and say, I would like maybe not infinity immigrants. Maybe I don't like the West Coast seems to be honeycombed by Chinese Communist Party agents, and we should. I don't
Maybe some
like
of the
that.
Indians should go back.
I don't like that CSIS is a fucking joke within the Five Eyes community. I don't like that this we've been subverted so much that no one takes us seriously, and it's directly because of this. It's because we're allowing this to happen, and everyone can see it, and everyone thinks it's stupid. If that runs afoul of some laws, I actually don't fucking care anymore. And maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm not representative of everyone in my society. But if you can't sign up for this, then what? Okay, you're going to be the smartest fucking corpse at the bottom of the pile when things really get bad, and you're so smart you didn't say anything, you didn't at least try. And just from a distance, this doesn't look like anything. Like, sure, if they're going to put the microscope over this, they're going to put the microscope over anything, is what I'm saying. And it just seems that if not this, then what at this point? So there's my
Yeah,
little
and that was a
fucking
big design philosophy behind the website in particular. Like I wanted to, especially the page that you're on there, the What is Remigration page. I think these ideas are becoming more and more normal, but a lot of people can struggle to articulate the problem and the solution. So this page is just kind of our one-stop shop on everything. We take you from kind of what nationalism is to the kind of driving force behind the problems of mass immigration, the lies that they tell to justify it, what the Great Replacement is, and then it kind of leads right into our kind of remigration page at the end. So this is, I kind of envision this as the page that that anyone can just share. Oh, you're having an argument with someone in your family, maybe. This is it. Just point them here, and this will explain it to everyone.
And you know what's great though, and sorry to interrupt you, but we talk about this on our show occasionally, that there's almost no argument that exists anymore for mass migration. In previous points, there would have been in years past. They might have even just thrown out, oh, they do the jobs that Canadians don't want to do. It seems that even liberals have surrendered that argument. It's not clear to anyone that there's a job shortage. That's an insane line of argumentation. So almost every argument that I was seeing 10 years ago isn't there anymore. And they've just admitted, it's just the thing we're doing. I don't know why we're doing it. We're just doing it because we have to. But it's like there's actually no logic behind it anymore, which is fucking wild.
Yeah, it's just this. Well, I mean, there are kind of elitist arguments about lowering our wages and profiting off of higher housing
The
costs.
stuff we talk about, like even on our show, but also amongst ourselves, the real secret reasons. And I know you were on an interview with my friend Black Horse on the Red Ensign program, and his big thing is elite theory. He talks about the Laurentian elite, the Western elite, and stuff, and getting in their minds. And we don't even need to go down that path about why they're doing it. You can find other sources for that, but just suffice to say that for regular people, I think they've woken up to the fact that it's like they're not even trying to lie to us anymore. Because if they told the truth, everyone would hate it. Everyone would say like, oh, they just need a consumer class. The Century Initiative has just decided Canada needs 100 million people by over the next 100 years. Well, why is that? I don't know. They just want to do it, and they've got billions of dollars, so that's what we're doing. And it's just out there, and no one can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So this is our kind of central kind of piece of the website to kind of break down and give you kind of responses to all the kind of common arguments. What's fueling the push for mass immigration? What we should do instead. It's kind of all in this one single web page. So if you have anyone that you think you can convince to our side, this would be the perfect kind of web page to kind of red pill them, so to speak.
And if I can just, I don't know if you ever saw this, but I'd just love to share this momentarily. Once again, to explain where I'm coming from, this was a short video that myself and my team had produced. Christ, how long ago was this? 8 months ago? Yeah. Time flies, but it's called Paving Over the Public, Canada Immigration Policy in Opposition.
That's excellent.
Well, thank you very much. And I made it with people like yourselves in mind, but this was one of the...
I just watched it again this weekend.
Yeah, it's jarring. It really shakes you out, and you realize that. And this is something I was saying to, even on recent live streams. I said, you guys have people seem to underestimate just how much of a simple policy position this was. Like remigration as a solution doesn't sound that outlandish because mass migration initially was just a policy position. It's just something politicians decided to do with the stroke of a pen. Of all of the problems facing us right now that the Dominion society doesn't get into, there's technological problems, there's problems with liberalism as such, there's all kinds of other things that are oppressing us through modernity. This actually is the easiest one. The mass migration problem, if they wanted to, could, in my opinion, they could solve it within a few years. It's not even that hard. Every other country's figured it out. So that's why I like that you're singling this one out, because I think it's the most achievable. I think it's the most achievable in the shortest amount of time, and I think the support is there. Furthermore, I don't think the opinions in favor of immigration are even that entrenched. When you speak to, let's call them old stock Canadians, like they kind of pair it. And I'm going to mention something you had talked about before. Let me just switch back to this. And I'm kind of going all over the map here, but it reminded me of something I really wanted to talk to you about. On the main page of your site, you said it's a vanguardist movement. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to maybe discuss that, because people look at this site and it's to get membership, it's to get people involved. But I don't believe you would call yourself a populist organization. You would call yourself a vanguardist organization. Would you like to just explain that a little bit, why one and not the other?
Well, in a sense, we are populist. A large part of our kind of organizational strategy is building a broad base of support to create some bottom-up pressure on political parties. But I do describe us as a vanguard movement. I'm a fan of, Jonathan Bowden. I'm sure you are as well, or at least I get the sense.
I've said, like, if we had the money and we had the people willing to commit to this, we should be building statues of him all throughout the UK at least.
How did I know? So we need the kind of organization that's willing to kind of push the boundaries of things, and that's exactly what a vanguard politics is. So we are putting forward proposals that are on the kind of bleeding edge of the Overton window, a concept that probably 90% of Canadians have never heard of or considered, or at least not in a coherent, cohesive kind of plan like we've put forward. And we want to push those boundaries and make these kind of ideas normal. And it comes on kind of both of our main ideas. It's not only remigration, but it's also kind of pushing back on this liberal, internationalist, globalist worldview, and putting forward our own worldview in the form of nationalism. These ideas are completely common sense in the broader history of man. They're completely normal, but we're in this day and age, they're considered kind of radical. So we're going to push the boundaries and kind of reinforce normal thought back on society that's gone insane.
And also, and it's sometimes difficult for me to explain this to Americans, because we love our American audiences, but the Canadian voter is substantially different. Teaching the average Canadian how to be idealistic again, because when you speak to them, sometimes it feels like they're shackled by these opinions that, well, we have to do this because we're a nation of immigrants, or because multiculturalism is enshrined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, or it's some legalistic reason. But we're daring to ask people, especially young people, what do you want the country to be? Just blue sky it for me for a second. Does this feel good? Does everything feel like it's going well? Just take 5 minutes and imagine what you would like Canada to be. And they'll say, well, what do I do against these people that levy criticisms against me? It's like, well, here's the thing. You need to understand that if you can indeed trace your lineage back multiple generations, if you are confident in the place in this country, as you probably are, those who are listening, then it actually doesn't fucking matter what anyone said. They can't, debate you around it. I mean, they can't introduce like, aha, but you're actually an immigrant just like me. I got here 5 minutes ago. Your family got here, 7 generations ago. We're the same. You don't even need to engage in that debate. You can tell them to shut up. You don't need to feel as if you must engage with this stuff. Sit down as a citizen of this nation called Canada, and for once in your life, ask, do I like the way things are going? How could they be, and what does that look like? And that's so antithetical, I think, to the average Canadian voter. You have to teach them how to do that, teach them a new dream of Canada. And that's why I think this organization could even sort of crowbar that idea in.
Yeah, I think that's what's really animating people behind our movement in general. So much of what people have become cynical about in politics is just the general negativity of everything. So much of politics is just rejecting and opposing the other side. And I think that the PPC is the worst kind of culprit of these. I think they offer kind of no sort of positive, cohesive vision for the country. They just reject a bunch of ideas that they think they can kind of gain some popularity off of. We're putting forward two positive ideas. And I think this is also why kind of remigration is becoming such an kind of popular term around the world. It's become this sort of positive mobilizing myth for young people in particular who had their countries stolen from them before they even graduated high school. We're going to take the country back. We have the plan to do so. And we're going to pass the country on to the next generation much better than it was passed on to us. And I think that's what's getting people so excited and so interested. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air after breathing the kind of noxious fumes of modern politics for the last few decades. We're rejecting it all. We stand for two simple ideas, and I think a broad set of society can get on board with them.
Yeah, and that's why I liked the phrase vanguards, because I think that would be the goal. And you had mentioned in another interview, might have been with the Schmidt's house, by saying that broadly people will they're not very ambitious in their politics. They tend to go along to get along. That's just not with Canada. That's everywhere else, really. So what you really need is to attract that 10%. Let's just make up numbers, right? But 10% of the most passionate people, the ones who are the radicals, the activists, the ones who agitate for change and make decisions. And that's what you're trying to attract. And I know when you were on with Black Horse, as I said, his big thing is elite theory, and he posed a question, which was, how can you use this? And I think there was even a comment here in the chat. I'm not going to look it up, but I was going to, based on my memory, was how can you use this to affect the elites, and for those who've listened to our show before, you got your Laurentian elites in Ontario, you've got the Western elites, you've got the Quebecois, they got their own elite. I don't know what's going on the East Coast. No one tells me what's going on over there. There might be nothing. There might be something. And then, I suspect there's another one that we just haven't written about yet. But some kind of dynastic family in the mix. But
the question out east. Come on.
Yeah. There's something brewing in the East Coast. I'm sure of it. But there's how would you affect change with the elites? And that's why I thought, okay, the Vanguard's Party, you're trying to attract the people who are the most ambitious in this sort of direction, and then using them to pierce into that. But if you wanted to speak to that, maybe there's no good answer for this, but I know that
no, I have been thinking about this since Black Horse kind of stumped me, because as I mentioned, like, we are taking a pretty populist stance in getting organized, and I do think that's important. I've read The Populist Illusion. I understand elite theory. I understand both sides of it. But I think when it comes to the elite perspective, like, there are a lot of benefits to mass immigration, as we quickly went over, suppressing wages, rising asset prices. These are benefits to elite owners, right? But the consequence of social cohesion affects everyone. And the elites themselves benefit from having a stable society for which to profit off of, and that's quickly disappearing. There's going to be more shocks to the system over the next few years. Like the pace of automation, especially with artificial intelligence, is moving at a startling pace, and it's going to change the labor force dynamics drastically. And I'm concerned with what Canada will look like given the lack of overall kind of community and order as a result of mass immigration, as these kind of labor force shocks hit our new population. And that risks the entire structure top to bottom. So I think that elites will resonate with that message. I think that everyone can agree that our society is less nice to live in now. Um, and, perhaps they can get away from it a little bit better. They're jet setting internationalist types. But having a country that you can recognize, I think there's a value to that regardless of your standing in society.
Yeah, I think you also need to be willing to be bullies for a while. Like, for example, when I hear about academic institutions that are taking massive hits because they don't have that revenue stream of international students, which is just scams upon scams, right?
Yeah.
Then they start complaining, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do without this? We have to fire so many people. I say, not my problem. Just like in America, if I were American and all the farmers say, we don't know how to make this work without a slave caste.
Yeah.
I'd say, figure out your fucking corn, number one. Second of all, don't complain at me, talk to me. Here's what it is. Here's the law. The law is you don't get to do this anymore. I'm not actually thinking about you. I'm thinking about everyone else. Okay, and that sucks for you. Now we can talk. Let's figure out how to make this make sense now. You want to run a university. You want to run a lower rung college. I guess you need to figure out how to make a new trades program or a new suite of retraining programs, and you need to do what colleges always do. The only reason these colleges exist is because, well, one, they're kind of elevated high schools, unfortunately, but the ones that really do matter, the trade schools, they were liaisons between the industrial marketplace, the employers, and then these kids who came out of high school. They're there to fill gaps, figure out new gaps to fill. Now I need to be a bit mean and cut off your easy money before you start doing that. It's going to suck for a while, but then it's not going to anymore. And you have to do this across every industry. And you need this sort of vanguardist movement to be bullies and really be the villains on the side of the people and saying, okay, you're going to have to fire a lot of people, but we're going to revert course on this. We're going to fix this because it doesn't make sense economically that this is all just one big globalist casino coupled with secret caste systems of people that want to rape me to death. That doesn't make sense to me. So let's figure out a new way.
Yeah. This is a nation, not some weird hotel and casino for anyone that can afford to get here. We have to stand up to these people. They've been kind of grifting off of the mass immigration system for years now. Woe is me that they have cut off this revenue stream. They should get back to their fundamental purpose of whatever it might be, educating our people, feeding our people, not just trying to make slim profits.
Don't come to me
for
me to tell you how to make your business work. Be better at business, or I don't know, learn to fucking code. I don't know, go grow some sage. I don't know what you want to do. Figure out another thing other than this. If you can't figure out how to make your industry work without scamming, that's not really my problem. My problem is to make it so that when I go on a bus, it doesn't reek. Sorry, that's our lives now. That's our lives now. I see certain types of people hurling trash. And I kind of live on the border of a rural area and an urban area. So I'm like, that's the perfect place where new Canadians dump all their plastic bags of human feces now. So whatever, I'm going to be really mean to make that stop. So my children don't need to deal with that.
Yeah, even if you need to fire a couple of administrators at Humber College.
Yeah. Oh, fucking Humber College. Yeah. Let's name some colleges. Centennial College, or what was the one? Conestoga. Yeah, we don't have a business if we're not like giving people who got here 5 minutes ago useless pieces of paper. I'm like, I don't know. Then Start a car dealership then. I mean, be a used car salesman. This isn't a job that's fucking real. We've had some good comments here in the chat. I just wanted to call attention to this one again because I can't put it on screen. From DMCTZTV says the Irvings control New Brunswick. If we're talking
Yeah, I
about
said
East
that.
Coast, I don't. That could be a real or not real comment. I have no idea, but
They're correct.
good.
The Irvings are from ship money.
We have a question here from Dr. Pooks. Is there any ties between the Dominion Society and similar nascent orgs in the UK with Steve Laws and Rupert Lowe?
There's no direct connections between us. I've drawn a lot of inspiration from these folks for sure. I think that we're mutuals with some of them on Twitter now. Steve has promoted some of our stuff, commented on some of our stuff even today. But there's no direct. We're not in communication with them or anything like that. Just fighting the same fight and taking inspiration from each other.
Another comment here from one of our most beloved commenters, Sex Freakman, says, I think you could convince a couple elites, listen, these guys aren't great consumers, okay? They subsist on concrete poached and sweat and the blue light of computer screens. That actually would be the approach, just to circle back to that. Because I do think, I know you've got your wheels turning about the question, mine as well, after I heard it, because really one of the purposes of an org like this, and I'm not telling you what to do, I know you know this, because you had mentioned creating white papers and things like that. So there's certain types of content and certain types of political activism for different groups. So your street level activism wouldn't really be to communicate to elites at all. And, you know, elites is a vague term, of course.
Yeah.
But these would be, let's say, the people that matter, the people with money. They tend to respond more to media. So that's the purpose of a white paper. And I say that because I've seen some organizations in the past, they'll write a white paper and just leave it there. They put it up online. They did some good research and packaged it well, but it doesn't go anywhere because you got to take the white paper and really blast it out there. And that's where it gets complicated. I work in marketing, so this is sort of my background. I worked in PR for a while. A lot of people don't have that sort of machine to do that. That's something that we work on sort of behind the scenes over here. But if you can get the white paper in front of the right people, then you can amplify. Then by degrees, it eventually gets in front of the elites. It's a different pathway entirely. That's just one way to do it, for example.
Yeah.
That's one
and
pathway.
The purpose behind the white papers is also to make it simpler for actual political parties and governments to implement our ideas, to give them a kind of ready-made plan to adopt pieces or preferably the entire remigration plan. But as well, I think our whole kind of approach to thing and general aesthetic will be more appealing to elites. I think these problems that mass immigration is creating in our society affect everyone on like a foundational, like core level. You can feel something is wrong deep inside of your soul. And I think our kind of professionalism and high aesthetic sensibilities will put us on the radar of some of these folks. And if they do want to make a difference in these areas, I think they'd be more open to working with an organization like ours than some of the different activists and organizations that have predated us.
Yeah, and playing the elite game, really, it's a job in itself because you need to pay close attention. Just the mainstream news, you got to pay very close attention to what Mark Carney is up to. Like, for example, there appears to be, in one way or another, a shift in focus away from America to building trade ties with Europe and elsewhere. So that presents narrative opportunities for something like this. What does closing doors to America mean for this thing that we're doing? So, but it's that every single week, making a different argument every single week, which can be done. Because some people will say, and the reason I bring this up, some cynical people would say, well, why try to talk to them at all? They're the ones who got us into this mess. They're the ones responsible for all this. Is there any reason to even, why would they hear us out? And I'm cognizant of that. I understand that, but I'm an optimist. I'm just a sweater boy cutie deep down, and I think that look, at some point they'll never admit that they were wrong, they'll never cede any ground to us or people like us, but they will shift in some way because the plan that they had, it just doesn't work anymore. Like we can intuit that infinity, low skilled migrants is not the way. Like that's, if anything, a short term game. If anything, a momentary bump in the GDP, but long term, I think they know that too. But they're kind of at a loss for what to do. And I think some say there's been a vibe shift. I don't like to employ that terminology really, but I do think right now is the moment for something like this, because I suspect that even not all elites, but certain elites are looking for something else, because a lot of ideas left with Justin Trudeau. Let's just say that there's people in search of an alternative to this system, which doesn't even work economically. That's my suspicion, anyway.
Yeah, I think you can. I think just in the last few months, you've seen how quickly and quietly the elites can kind of readjust. Just like we saw how power shifted from Trudeau to Carney in just a matter of a couple of months, right? And things can shift like that in all matters of direction. And I think what we're offering is palatable and appealing to people of all sorts of directions, and we're hoping to get on their radar and shift the Overton window and the conversation towards really the most important issue.
Oh, we had a comment here from Fox Ranger X, a valid point. He says, if we get immigration reduced and then go into a recession, the nationalists are going to be blamed for destroying the economy.
Go
anyway.
into a recession?
Well, that's the thing. For me, I'd say those people, look, I'm trying to tank the economy just to feel something. Like everything sucks. Everything's bad. We're in a recession. If it gets
We're going to
worse,
pretend we're not in a recession.
yeah, just
technically, we need 2 consecutive quarters of shut the fuck up. It's obviously a mess.
Here's the Daniel Tyrie we know. He's coming out swinging. Fuck you. How about, guess what? Pointing the Sam Hyde gun fingers in your face. Guess what? Go fuck yourself. But yeah, and maybe we need to be ahead of that. I think that's, for what it's worth, I think that's an interesting proposition. That I don't.
No, we'd rather a recession than the replacement. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was more this idea that, and I am not too good on this either, but getting ahead, planning for success. And I was saying this even in America, that a lot of people didn't plan for day 2 after Trump was elected. Furthermore, planning for the success of this thing, I'm like, well, what happens if we get what we want? I want to get out in front of these sorts of arguments as they're used against us, plan for those. Because sometimes, I'm sure you've noticed this in our spaces, it's very easy to get down on ourselves and assume that we're on the fringe now, we'll be on the fringe forever, we deserve to be on the fringe even, or we like being on the fringe, and things that aren't on the fringe are less true, right? We're not really prepared for being popular. You know what I mean? So I like to even, just hypothesize of, what would happen. Like, here's the next question, actually. I know we got to get going soon, but I wanted to just speak to, I don't think this is on the page, maybe you can't speak to this in detail right now, but a remigration plan. Let's just talk about remigration. Give me the elevator pitch. A lot of people have heard it. What is your vision of what remigration could look like in Canada?
It's a great question. And we do have a thorough remigration plan on our website. It's right there on the What is Remigration page near the bottom. We have a 3-phase, 10-point plan breaking down what we think remigration is. So to start off, remigration is more than just a synonym for deportations. Deportations is a part of remigration, but it's just one facet. So technically speaking, deportations are the involuntary removal of illegals. But we want to go further. We want to adjust all sorts of rules to restrict citizenship and even remove or encourage the removal of people who came here through the proper legal channels. So one, we want to complete moratorium on immigration for at least 10 years while the kind of situation stabilizes. We want to do things like abolish the temporary foreign workers program, which is a very anti-Canadian worker policy. It should be removed completely, and companies should be incentivized to hire Canadians and invest in capital and automation. We want to see birthright citizenship restricted. Canada has some of the most liberal birthright citizenship in the Western world. Someone born to a tourist or an illegal migrant automatically gets citizenship, which can be used to get their family's citizenship. This is birth tourism and anchor babies and so on. We need to restrict things like this. We also want to introduce policies to make Canada less comfortable for immigrants that are already here. We want to introduce a remittance tax on any funds leaving the country. We want to enforce strict kind of language rules inspired by Quebec for public signage and in the public service. Things like driver's licenses and citizenship tests shouldn't be conducted in any possible language. They should be done in English and French. And then we also want to not only do we want to deport, the 20,000 to 500,000 illegals and ensure the 4.9 million people on temporary visas that are expiring throughout the year get removed from the country. We want to also introduce things like a voluntary repatriation program. This would be the government providing assistance for people that are here already legally as citizens or permanent residents to void their citizenship. And we would provide things like a plane ticket and maybe financial incentives to encourage them to return to their home. And we even put forward even more radical kind of rules to adjust the current rules to allow us to revoke permanent residency and even naturalized citizenship in certain cases of things like national security. So we have a kind of thorough plan that includes a wide plethora of policies that we think could quickly kind of get Canada back on track and kind of reassert our national identity and make sure that we have a country that we can all recognize to pass on to our children and grandchildren.
These are all very clear, very easily understood policies. And that's what I was trying to imagine before I'd even really looked at the site. I was imagining these sort of concentric circles going outward of. You got the easiest stuff you could do right now. Because a lot of people, maybe even myself included, believe that if you just turn the financial spigots off over these people, they would just self-deport. I suspect that maybe even most of them would self-deport if you stopped giving them free stuff.
Yeah, if you stopped letting them send money back and you stopped giving them free money, you shut off that kind of opportunity, I think a lot of them would choose to go home. I agree. And that's why it's right there in phase one.
Yeah, and we've got some questions here. Apparently on X, I think it kicked off. Maybe you didn't show the first part of it. People can check this out on the site too. What is Remigration on dominionsociety.ca.
Yeah, you can find right to the plan by typing in dominionsociety.ca/remigration. It'll bring you right to the remigration plan.
We got one question here from Dirtbag Dan. He says, what about all the non-Canadians that have citizenship? Legal immigrants from the Middle East and Africa, for example. Are we planning on getting rid of those too? They may be here legally, but they're also not Canadian. That alone should warrant removal. And I guess that would be what I was saying, the concentric circles. You have the most obvious. You got the illegal immigrants at the center. Those are the easiest to get away. Then you got, expired student visas, all that bureaucratic gray area. But then on the outermost, you have perfectly legal Canadian immigrants who may be posing maybe even a security threat. I'll give one example that people can just wrap their heads around. This is an American example, but I remember hearing about the Patel hotel cartel. The fact that one family, the Patels, own something to the tune of 72% of hotels by basically getting their families to live there and live in basically slave conditions, and then just undercutting other hotels and engaging in this process to drive out the competition and have a monopoly there. So hey, they've been here since the 70s, but they have accumulated enough capital and influence to become something of a political player while sending money back home, while they started their own banks to encourage people to come over here. And I would look at that and say, you should just get rid of all that. Just get rid of them. And I don't even have a legal case for it. I understand that. But I think everyone looks at that and says that's fucked up. So something must be done. So just to set that up, the answer to the question: what about all those people?
Yeah, so we've tried to put forward, kind of send them back into a cohesive, legitimate kind of policy plan. In terms of people that are here that came through the proper channel, we kind of offer a few different ideas. So the first one is a voluntary repatriation program. So as I mentioned, this would be offering kind of incentives for people to voluntarily give up their citizenship and return to their country. We saw Trump do this a couple of months ago. They started offering free plane tickets back home. So that would probably be the first step, and then we'd probably increase kind of financial incentives to encourage more and more people to leave for giving up their citizenship. This one's very easy, and big constitutional changes aren't, or fights with the Supreme Court and so on wouldn't be required to implement such a thing. The next one is there's a class before you get your full citizenship in Canada called the permanent residency, which allows you to stay here indefinitely, but you don't have full citizenship rights. So these people, as per my understanding, would be more easy to remove. So we want to adjust the rules. Currently, you can have it revoked if you engage in like criminal behavior or if you lied and engaged in fraud on your application. We would kind of make sweeping changes to this to allow us to remove all the permanent residents that aren't full citizenships and send them back. So it's hard to get good figures on how many permanent residents are in the country right now, but it's probably roughly 4 million, but it's hard to get statistics on where they are in that process. But that would allow us to remove a lot of people that are currently here legally but aren't full citizens yet. And then the third one you'll find in phase 3 there, point 8. It's adjusting and expanding the rules for revoking naturalized citizenship. So again, these revoking naturalized citizenship is currently very, very strict in Canada. I think the only way you can do it is if you engage in fraud to get your citizenship. But we propose kind of broader changes to allow for people that are not, that would be deemed against our national interest or demonstrating loyalty to foreign countries to have their citizenship annulled and be deported. So with this, we have in mind folks that are, in our streets engaging in violent tribal conflicts that are imported into our country. Like clearly these people are against Canada's national interest. They're not loyal to our country. They're still loyal to a foreign power. We would use this as justification to have their citizenship revoked and allow us to remove them from the country. Now, this would be a massive kind of constitutional change, right? Taking away citizenship. Under Harper, if this was a rule, if you engaged in terrorism, and Trudeau early on when he became prime minister, he annulled that rule. That's actually where his famous "a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian" line came from on the debate stage. He was giving Harper shit for taking away or having a rule to take away citizenship from terrorists. So when he says "a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian," he means it doesn't matter if you're a terrorist, you're still a Canadian.
It makes me mad every time I hear it. I never get
it's just
less
absurd.
mad.
Yeah. So we want to kind of bring back kind of a more broad set of rules, and I would expect challenges from the Supreme Court on especially this point. But I think a government that's really taking the kind of Canadian interest in mind would be ready to take advantage of parts of our Constitution, like the notwithstanding clause and like the peace, order, and good governance clause, to kind of reassort order within Canadian society. And I think if you had the support of the people, the Supreme Court would have a difficult time overturning things like that. But that's our proposal when it comes to the legal folks that came here through the proper channels when the kind of traders were in charge.
I think that's a very robust plan. Nothing much to argue with there. I know we got to get going soon. I want to get to 2 points, and these could be the last two. One, Sex Freakman says make monthly penis inspection mandatory for permanent citizens. You can't cheat on that, he says. And it is true. You can't cheat on that. There's no bad ideas in brainstorming. You got to put it up on the board. A more serious question here was Daniel. What do you think about the government of Alberta and its recent issues with immigration reform? The UCP has talked of freezing financial support to immigrants as well. This is from Anonymous.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. I've seen Danielle Smith talk about taking some inspiration about from Quebec on matters of immigration, but she seems to flip flop back and forth on immigration related matters frequently. I know they recently just introduced some new program to allow permanent residents, non citizens from foreign countries, to act as police officers and stuff. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of ideological consistency coming out of the UCP on the immigration file. But I support, technically speaking, immigration is a shared jurisdiction between provincial governments and federal governments, and I support all provinces, taking a page out of Quebec's book and being a bit more selective with their immigrants and putting pressure from the provincial side. But I'm not super informed on the Alberta case in specific.
Sorry, I was just transfixed. We pulled up a video here. We're looking at City News.
Yeah.
Premier Smith facing criticism over recent immigration comments. The man before us right now looks like a malfunctioning droid. Look at just these facial expressions are incongruent. My God, they just put anyone on TV. Just doesn't even know how to have a face. Sorry to derail you here, but this is the type of things that that totally fuck up an interview. All right. I think Anonymous says I don't know if India will even accept these people back. I have a feeling we haven't even met the average Indian. And I know I wanted to get to that because I know you addressed that at one point and said that there would be, and I think this is possible, there would be a plan to broker deals to incentivize this for their former nations, for them to take them back. Because that really is the problem. That's what America has going on with Mexico. It's a very it's like adversarial immigration where Mexicans are like subjecting America to immigrants and they don't want them back. So you need to figure out how to cajole them into even taking their own people back. So I assume it would be something similar.
Yeah. I mean, diplomatic relations between countries will be important to implement any sort of significant remigration. In particular, with those kind of three major countries that are the source of most of immigration to Canada over recent years. So that's the Philippines, China, and India. Ultimately, if I was in charge, they're going back. So like you have to play hardball with hardball, and there's a lot of facets to diplomacy and international relations. There's a lot of levers we can pull there, but the people were not interested in keeping around. They're going back regardless of what a foreign country says.
That is probably the best place to end this right now. I know I've got to get going, but again, apologies for whatever the hell is going on with the screen right now. Usually it doesn't have that massive gap on the side. It's been wonderful speaking with you. We got to everything I want to discuss. I'm feeling good about the future. Is there any last point you'd like to make or anything you'd like to, aside from the website dominionsociety.ca, is there anything else you would like to point people to?
Yeah. I mean, like, take some time. Make sure you're following us on social media. You can find me. I'm mostly on Twitter, but you can find me everywhere. Follow me. It's just at Daniel Tyrie, my full name. And then make sure you're following the Dominion Society as well. We're at Dominion Soc, SOC, on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all the major platforms. You can find us there. And head over to our website, please, society.ca. Check out some of the pages that Dimes has been showing up on screen. If you can afford it, become a member. It's $25, and I personally send you a nice membership card, and lapel pin. You can see them on screen now. And consider making a donation. Like we're growing fast, but we're dependent on grassroots support. So if you can help us out in any way, please do so. We're just getting started, and we're raring up to punch out into the real world as soon as possible.
All right. This has been wonderful talking to you. Thank you again for taking the time. Thanks, everyone, for the insightful comments throughout this evening. There's been as few retarded comments as I've ever seen on a stream. It's made me proud.
I take credit for that.
Yes.
I elevated things.
You did. You have no idea how much you've elevated it. Anyway,
tuned into your stream a couple of times, Dimes. I have some idea.
All right. With that being said, thank you again.